Welcome on the Gospel Spice podcast, where you are invited to taste and see that the Lord is good. Gospel Spice is your Christ-centered podcast infused with in-depth biblical flavors and sprinkled with a dash of French culture, guaranteed to spice up your relationship with God. I'm your host, Stephanie Roussel, and here is today's episode. So, Ronnie Olivier, welcome on the Gospel Spice podcast.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to start right away with your story. What happened on Christmas Day, 1991?
1991. And so something happened prior to that. I think that I probably need to discuss. I come from a little area in New Orleans, poverty stricken area, and man, a lot of drugs and violence was there. And I think a kid's greatest teacher is what he see rather than what he hears. And so, and during that time where the crack epidemic took place, it completely destroyed my neighborhood. And so here it is, I'm in the midst of that. And by the same token, there's a transition with my father, who's my hero. He makes a transition to Jacksonville, Florida. And this little kid is trying to process all of this. I'm feeling abandoned. And so I'm very hurt, and that hurt turns to anger, and so he leaves, and so this crack epidemic takes place, and the streets begin to fall to me. And so consequently, I get in a confrontation with a guy. Me and a couple of my friends jumped him. So the next time he sees me is Christmas Day on Canal Street, and we're outnumbered. He got about 6 guys. It's just three of us, two or three of us, and um one thing led to another, and was kind of scared. I had on a starter jacket, and so a lot of people was getting robbed and killed behind starter jackets. And um, I would think not to wear it. I think to own myself, and so I had a gun, and they tried to snatch me off the front of the bus. I turned around. I really thought one was reaching for a gun, and I start shooting, and two young men end up in a pool of blood. One survives and one dies. And I found myself 2 days later in a juvenile facility, um, going to court, and I thought I thought I thought it was gonna happen like, it usually happened when I got in trouble. I had been in trouble and went to the juvenile facility quite a few times, some minor things, but all my mother or daughter come do is sign me out. And so I was thinking my mother was gonna sign me out this one, and mama couldn't sign me out this one. So consequently, they charged me as an adult, and sent they charged me with first degree murder, which carried a manner to which carried the death penalty. And man, here it is. I'm about 17 years old now, and I'm charged with first degree murder. And it really didn't dawn on me. I was always optimistic. Oh, I'm gonna beat this, or I'm going home. This don't really matter. But I think the weight of it took place when the jury was deliberating. I felt the real weight of it, how serious this was. And so I can remember it's about 12 a.m., 1 a.m. in the morning. They put me in a holding tank while the jury deliberating. And I could still hear the door slam, bam, and the keys turn when the guard turned the key, and I could still hear his footsteps fade off until I didn't hear him no more. And I'm all alone in this holding tank. And I begin to think, there's 12 people right now who really don't know anything about me that's making a decision on whether I live or die. And it got real. I was like, man, I don't want to die. And I can hear my mother's voice. I believe God was using her voice. My mother told me, she said, if you ever in trouble that I can't get you out, you call on Jesus. And I got on my knees in that holding tank, and I was crying real tears. I was real scared. And and I prayed this prayer. I made a deal with God. A lot of people say don't make deals with God. I made a deal. My prayer was very simple. I said, Lord, if you don't let them kill me, I promise you I'll serve you the rest of my life. And for the first time in my life, I experienced the peace of God. I felt calm. I had this inward resolve that I was going to be okay. I didn't know what it was. I just knew I was going to be okay. And so later I get before the court. So they come back with a guilty verdict of the lesser offense, which is the responsive verdict, second degree murder, which I didn't know carried a mandatory life sentence without benefits of parole or probation. In layman's term, that means you die in prison. You never get out. And so was kind of real stunned about that, but happy about the fact that, hey, I wasn't dying. I still have a chance. And was very optimistic about that. And so here it is. I have this life sentence. I like to say it like this. In that cell, man, I had in that holding tank, I really received 2 life sentences. The state was giving me a life with no benefits, but God was giving me a life with so many benefits. He encouraged you in the word that says, forget them not. Forget not my benefit. There's so many you'll forget. And so I got 2 life sentences that day that really changed my life. And so even though I didn't understand what was going on with me, there was really no outward evidence that I was born again. The only evidence that was because I still talked the same way, was still doing some of the same thing, but the difference was I was being convicted. I felt bad about it now. I couldn't
Right.
understand.
You
Yeah, bro.
describe, so this is 1993 when you go to Angola prison, and I want to ask you to give us a little bit of an idea of, I mean, there's no way, we have to read your book 27 Summers, which you absolutely must read if you're watching, listening. I mean, I didn't sleep all night reading this. It's gripping. You describe in there how, so I want you to tell us a bit about what Angola was like, but also you describe when you, I mean, and I'm choking up just listening to you sharing that, when Jesus clearly made you do a 180 in prison and made you throw away cassette tapes and porn magazines that were just offensive to him. And that was kind of you had your own revival after. He didn't give up on you because you gave your life to him. But like you said, it didn't change much of anything at first, but he was faithful to you. So can you describe to us life in Angola a little bit, and then what he did and what that led you towards, and how your
Yeah.
life just turned towards ministry in incredible ways?
Yes. Yes. And so it didn't really look like I was born again to about 2 years later, and just like um a newborn baby in a natural, when it comes out the womb, it looks like what it been through. It don't, it don't come out looking like the little gerbil baby.
There's no
We
cute
still
little bows and cute little hairdos
no,
and dresses. No, it's pretty
no,
messy. Yes.
and we be talking about, oh, they're so cute and they look just like a little prune. We be lying, you know. And so it takes the process. It's a process that the baby goes through. It has to be clean. It has to be fed. Um, it has to be cared for. It's totally dependent upon someone else. And so that's how I was. And so here it is. I find myself going to Angola. I never forget the ride, the Long Snake Road, 20 miles to Angola, right off of 61, Tunica Hill. And I'm thinking, man, what's going on here? What have I gotten myself into? And so I heard all the stories at that they always talked about Angola being the bloodiest prison in the nation. I knew how they preyed upon the young. Um, Most of the young guys that go there, they get raped, and they end up being someone's girlfriends, their slave, and washing their clothes and cooking for them and what have you. And so I made a decision on that bus that, man, I'm going through these gates a man, and I'm gonna leave a man, whether I walk out or I go out in the box. So I was ready really ready to die, I was thinking. And so, but amazingly, God has this plan. He's orchestrating this. I'm talking about, it's amazing that I just ended up around a bunch of guys who was willing to help me and not hurt me. Man, I went to prison and found some of the most amazing men of God. I'm talking about mind blowing pastors. I'm talking about who's walking upright. You know, these pastors, it's very difficult to be a successful hypocrite in prison. You live in a glass jar. You know, the pastors live with their members.
Right,
Picture
because
that.
these pastors were prisoners who had gone through
Right,
seminary, right? So
right,
they're with
right.
you 24/7.
Right. And so man, they begin to help and disciple me and tell me how important it was for me to renew my mind and read the word, and how your mind had to catch up to what happened in your spirit, and telling me the importance of fellowship and developing a prayer life, you know. And so, man, as that went to happening, my life went to changing. And so I found myself, man, I literally went to sleep one way and woke up another way. And that's about that experience you talk about with the rap music, you know, because I had a problem with not only profanity but pornography also. And so here it is, but I was working very hard on the profanity. I couldn't stop. I'm talking about, man, I was like a professional cusser, you know, and I hated it. I start to hate it. You know, I catch myself, man, I just said that, and man, it just sounds so. And so here it is. I went to praying about it, and I can remember listening to some gangster rap with cuss words just flying through my ears, and God speaking to me. I'm talking about for the first time and the only time I ever heard the audible voice of God. It was loud in my ears. It like came through my headphones. What are you doing? And so I take my headphones off. I look around trying to see if somebody was around me. Nobody. I said, okay, I'm just tripping. I'm putting back on. I hear it again. And I'm like, Lord, I'm sorry. And so from that moment, I could hear him speaking in my spirit about getting rid of it. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna take all these cassette tapes and give it to a friend. And it was like, if it's not good for you, it's not good for them. So I went to tearing them up and, you know, getting rid of the books and just cleaning my house. And God went to really changing me. And so that launched me into the ministry and helping people. And before you know it, I find myself in a Bible college in 1999. New Orleans Baptist Theological Seminary. They had an extension center there. It still is there, where you can earn up into a bachelor's degree. Right now, it's a master's. You can get a master's right now, and they extended the program. But I was like, wow. So I launched off into that, and in 2006, I graduated with a bachelor's degree in Christian ministry. And so after that, you have an opportunity to be a what they call the inmate minister, you know, and that's your job through the prison. They give you a certain area, and that was your area to make rounds and just check on people and just minister to them, drop seeds, nuggets on them, pray for them, and just be there for them, you know. And and a lot of men was encouraged and born again because of that, because they had ministers. Here it is, Angola is 18,000 acres. There are several camps there.
Right.
And ministers filled every area of the prison until God completely changed the prison. Till I can remember we was on the ledge joking about, man, we haven't even seen a good fight in a while. Let's know someone getting killed or jug. And so
Right.
God was changing, completely changing the place. A lot of people are coming in from the outside. They had Wheaton College used to come spend their spring break with us. You know, they got females, everything that's all down the walk on the yard playing basketball with us. You know,
Yeah. So right, you had a front row seat, and I seem to remember how you described that you went on a 2-year missionary journey to one of the
yes,
worst camps, Camp J. I
yeah,
think we call it, and how from there, from where you were in
probably the worst conditions, revival broke out through you, through others.
Right.
So here's a question. When you left Camp J 2 years later, went back to the main prison, how did you understand what had been happening? How did you re-enter the main prison 2 years later, seeing that revival had kind of broken out everywhere and you had been a part of it? How did that compute for you?
It was a surreal moment. We always knew it was going to happen. We had
the prophecy.
We had prayer teams and prophecies, and so God was showing us what to come. He would give us a little glimpse into the future.
Can you share that prophecy that had been given prior to your coming and that you've been a part of?
Yes, Bill Young. I got a hold of, I don't know where I got it from, but I had a sheet of paper, man, with this powerful prophecy that really changed my life. And it was dated 1995 on it, I think. But I received it in 99 when I got into Bible college. And it said something like this. He said that God woke him up. It was late, he said, but he realized God didn't sleep. It was after midnight. He said God asked him a simple question: where do people keep their most prized possessions? And he was like, they keep them on a lock and key, in a safe, in a bank, somewhere where somebody can't get it. And God began to tell him, that's where I have my most prized possessions. They're in the prisons. And I was like, whoa, so I'm a treasure? I am God's treasure, even though I'm here, And so, and he went to talking about how God was going to build up an army of believers on the inside of the prison. And he said he saw them stepping out. Some had a golden glow on. He said, there goes my gold. Some had a silver glow. He said, there goes my silver. And he said he saw them stepping up. They became giants, and they were stepping over the fences. And it was going into these areas where ministers wasn't really doing their job. It was taking over churches and different places where they normally wouldn't get in. God was putting them in that position. And so, it's amazing that I was a part of that prophecy. I received it. I had them because we had our own radio station with inmates, disc jockeys, and I had them read it through the airways. All the churches in Angola, I passed out copies that they read it to their congregation and that they receive it. And man, it's happening because Angola wasn't a place where people go home, and we saw busloads and intercession prayer of people going home. And today, you can't even count the many people that have went home from Angola. And they're still coming home. The gates are like wide open, and they're doing some great things, in society now.
And now, a brief message from Gospel Spice.
Did you know that Gospel Spice has a library of in-depth Bible studies available online for free? Discover our previous podcast studies on your own or with friends, and enjoy exclusive content that includes listening guides for each teaching episode, study questions, verses to memorize, tips, and more. Just visit gospelspice.com and click on the Studies tab. Now back to the podcast.
Now, back to the video.
Right, because everyone who goes to Angola, if I understand, is sentenced to 50 years or more, so basically life, so you're not supposed to leave it. And yet you and countless others have. So what happened to you, fast forward maybe, and maybe using your motto, don't tell me what God can't do, which is so powerful and so relevant for all of us. Don't tell me what God can't do, and how that led to your parole 5 years ago.
So here it is, 2012. The United States Supreme Court comes down with a ruling that's in Miller versus Alabama that said it was unconstitutional to give a juvenile a mandatory life sentence. Said we should have some meaningful opportunity to freedom because a juvenile is more than likely to be rehabilitated than an adult because their brain is not fully developed. And it's the frontal lobe. It said the frontal lobe of the brain, which helps you to appreciate risk and consequences, is not fully. And so that's why juveniles do some crazy things.
Especially boys. Yeah, it's proven boys in particular. So yeah, up to age 25, 26 for sure. Mm-hmm.
Exactly. And so they come down with that ruling. When they came down with that ruling, that meant that my sentence at the time was illegal. It violated the Eighth Amendment, which was cruel and unusual punishment. And so here it is, man, I'm blown away, you know, because I was doing ministry and enjoying life in prison because I was walking in purpose, you know, when there was no light at the end of the tunnel, you know, but there was a light in a tunnel. And that's what I embraced. And he led me to that. And so it changes everything. I go back to court. So my sentence at the time is now illegal. So they have to re-sentence me. I go back to court, and I can remember my lawyers and them, they had this lady on the front row just kept looking at me. You know, she was staring at me, and I'm handcuffed and shackled with an orange jumpsuit. So I don't want to stare at her and make her feel uncomfortable. I know I look probably scary with that type of outfit on. And so I kind of looking at my peripheral, she's still staring, and she looks kind of familiar. I'm trying to figure out where I know her from. So my lawyers comes over, and they kind of nervous. They're like, man, you got some victim opposition. They said the victim's sister here. I said, no, man. I said, that's not the sister, that's the mother. And out of all the people in the courtroom, during my trial, I remembered her. I couldn't remember anybody else, not even my lawyer. The public, as in the words of one of my friends, my public pretender, the one who pretended to defend me. I couldn't even remember his face, but her face burned in my mind for years. I can still see her right now on the stand crying because of me taking the life of her son. And when I develop a prayer life, that's all who I pray. I pray for her more than I pray for anybody in my life. And my greatest desire was not to go home, was to one day have a conversation with her and just let her know how sorry I was, and to ask her to forgive me. And so I saw that opportunity there. So I said, look, see if I can get a dialogue with her. So they go over and try to talk to the DA. The DA talked to her. DA come back and let us know, man, look, she don't want to talk. Whatever she says, she's gonna say on the stand. And so it just so happened that they set the court date back to the following month. And I said, man, okay, great. They give me more time to pray. You know, so I prayed for her. And the next court date, she said she made the gesture towards, you know, my lawyer to have this dialogue, you know. And man, I never forget, man, probably the most, not probably, it is the most difficult conversation I ever had with a human being. You know, just the look of mother in our eyes, and you know, and I took her babies, you know, her baby from her. You know, that's all she sees is her baby, and just very emotional. Yeah, excuse me, but so here it is. She comes over. It sits her behind me. I turn around, and I never forget. Her arms were folded, and she was staring at me. And I said this. I said, "Ma'am," I said, "I take full responsibility of the death of your son." When I said that, she released her arms. She took a deep breath and exhaled, and she leaned toward me. And I began to just ask her that she forgive me. I said, this probably, I said, this the most, I said, I have absolutely no excuse. I said, it was senseless. Wasn't really thinking. I said, the worst decision I made in my life. And I said, I pray you can find somewhere in your heart to forgive me. And her response was, man, she said, I don't hate you. She said, I forgive you. He said, I believe you deserve a second chance. Oh man. Even though I was handcuffed and shackled, I felt that release. It was something else holding me that was tighter than that. That release, man. I was like, man, I didn't really care how the proceedings went after that because this is my greatest desire. This above me going on, you know. And I just wanted to share with her, you know, how I felt, not knowing what her response may be, you know. And man, she forgave me, and they actually reset.
Are you still in touch with her?
No, I'm praying one day that I could.
So you haven't seen her since that day 5 years ago?
No,
Yeah.
no,
Wow.
I haven't.
How has that experience of forgiveness shaped you moving forward as you had to face, I mean, a pretty unjust system and then having to re-enter society? How has that experience, because I mean, all these years later, you're still very emotional about it, which is so beautiful.
Yeah. And so I think the Bible explains it real good. Those who've been forgiven much, they love much. And it is difficult for me to harbor anything, you know, when someone offends me because of what I've been forgiven of. You know, who am I to hold it? So I'm quick to forgive, you know, quickly. I'm talking about uncut forgiveness. I'm not holding anything, you know, against anybody. And that's a type of freedom there, you know, because I can remember when I was in the cell, I never forget, I was praying about freedom and asking God, man, to release me and praying. And he went to showing me myself, my heart. He showed me my heart like a cell block of people that I had locked in. And he said this, he said, you want me to free you, but you don't want to let them go. And I was like, whoa, that was very sober. And look, I let the cells open and let everybody go. And so I believe one of the greatest principles in the Bible is the principle of sowing and reaping. You know, whatsoever man sow, that shall he also reap. And so when you sow forgiveness, you reap it. There's a harvest of that. You know, when you sow change, man, there's a harvest of that. You know, and a lot of people want their situation to change, but they don't want to change. They don't want God to change them, just change my situation.
Yeah.
You know?
So reaping a harvest of forgiveness, that's what you're living right now.
Yes.
So can you tell us what happened? You got paroled, you got out, and now what are you doing?
And so I get paroled, I get out. Man, amazingly.
5 years ago, almost to the date today, you said.
Yeah.
So it's a very special anniversary.
Yes.
And just before Christmas too. So a full circle.
Right. And so here it is. Man, Burl Kane, the former warden, calls me of Angola. He is now the commissioner of Mississippi State Department of Corrections. He's over all the prisons in Mississippi, and so he's looking for chaplains. And he called me to be the director of chaplaincy at Mississippi State Penitentiary in Portsmouth, Louisiana.
That's crazy.
Look, that is insane. If you've been anywhere or know anything about the departments of corrections, that you really understand the weight of that. That's impossible. It's impossible for someone who has committed a felony to get a job, period. At least on getting a job in the departments of corrections, you know. And so that's another
yeah, you're
miracle.
describing a moment, one of the rare light moments in the book where you're saying you basically at some point pulled up into the parking lot to meet with your parole officer and you were driving the same car as him, the same, you know, like government issued corrections facility car. And it's this absolutely crazy moment. And so you did that for a couple of years, and now you're back working with an organization that helped you re-enter society initially.
Yes, the Louisiana Parole Project, man. We help people who've been long-term, spent 20 years or more to re-enter society. Because a lot of things have changed, you know. cell phones. We have tech classes. We give them classes on scams and also on credit cards and things like that because they're used to they're familiar with cash, you know,
Right.
and something as simple as the self checkout. That's like mind blowing. Can be very terrifying for a person that's coming home from prison, you know. And so we help and walk alongside. They stay with our program at least a month, and if necessary, they'll go beyond that month.
Yeah.
And we
What's
help them
been
get
some
jobs.
of your in this particular job? What's been maybe some of the highlights for you? Is there someone who went through your hands on his way back into society that you've been particularly touched by in the last few months?
I think the greatest highlight is I get to go back into the prison. Part of my job is to go back. Just yesterday, I was back in Angola, you know, talking
Okay,
to some
that's
guys.
a crazy sentence you just said. You said that one of your greatest joys is to go back to prison.
Right. And it because
I'm speechless.
Because it feel, I call it filling hope buckets. When people see me, you know, I grew up there. They know me. They know I had life sentences just like them. And so it fills hope buckets and lets them know, man, oh man, that could happen for me, you know. And I go there and encourage them, man, not to give up. Keep on, man. Keep moving. Trust God, you know. Your time is coming. You got a time too, you know, because they got some real great guys in prison. You know, I know the media has painted this picture of these animals behind walls, but there are real people there with real hearts that's connected to real families that made some bad choices, you know. And
okay, what is Jesus doing in Angola right now?
Say that again.
What is Jesus doing in Angola right now, would you say?
Oh man, he's still doing some things. He's still encouraging guys. He's still changing people. I think Angola is a place where a person gets at the end of their rope. You know, you get to the bottom, there's nowhere to look but up, you know. And so when you get to the end of yourself, you know, that's the best place to be, you know, no matter where you're at in life. And that's where God can reach you at. That's where he wants you at, broken right there. And man, he's still doing some great things there. There's still some guys that's coming out, man, and really impacting their communities where they go, you know, because they've been through it, you know, they've been through it. And so we have a problem with these youngsters who are just killing one another. And the answer is the answer for that is the guys that's in prison who've been rehabilitated, that's been reconciliated, that's really been changed, you know, and they're not scared to go into the neighborhood.
Yeah.
You know?
Right, exactly. It's a missionary force unlike any other because there's no fear whatsoever there.
Yeah.
So as we end, I want to be mindful of your time. Why did you write 27 Summers Now? And what are you hoping for people like me when we read it?
I wrote it when I first came home. I was extended an invitation by Jim Cymbala, who followed my book, real good friend of mine, to come to Brooklyn and share my story. I had never shared my story before. I was so used to in prison preaching and teaching the word of God. You know, I never shared my story, never thought it had any value. And was kind of embarrassed about it. Didn't want to tell anybody what you know, everywhere I went, I'm not introducing myself as a former inmate. I don't even want you to know that about me because I felt people would prejudge me. And so here it is, I step out and share my story to the point where I was very transparent, and it did something in me. It freed me. It freed me, one, and amazingly, after the service, the response I got of how it was helping other people. I was like, hold up, what's going on here? You know? And so that brought me to the point of, man, putting it in a book where, you know, everyone can experience that throughout the world. And even after I'm gone, hundreds of years later, you know, somebody can pick up 27 summers and God can still breathe upon them and change them. And so that's what I want to share. I hope people see that no matter what area, no matter what situation they're in, you know, that if you trust God, man, he can change your situation. He can change you. That there's nothing impossible with him. Don't tell me what God can't do.
Yes,
Don't tell me
absolutely.
what he can't do. And so that's what I want to get out, and I pray that people be changed by it, that they be born again. That's one of the reasons why I chose 27 Summers for the title, because that's the type of I wanted to reach the masses. They got people who not Christians that'll pick up 27 Summers, because it was a tug of war between 27 Summers and Don't Tell Me What God Can't Do, of being the title. And so I say,
27
man,
Summers is much more evangelistic. I mean, I could see a lot of people picking this up as just a good read, and the way you weave Christ into all of this is right. I mean, it's your story. No one can argue that. This book is a powerful testimony of what God won't do. There's nothing God can't do. And you're weaving it in such a way that it definitely appeals to a very wide audience. And that's beautiful. I've been praying for you and your family, your wife and your son, your little boy, ever since I finished reading your book. And it's an honor to hear your story. And all of the people listening, watching this, I'm sure are going to join me to thank you for writing this, for being so brave, and truly for praying for you, for the work you're doing to bring awareness also to the harsh conditions and the unfair conditions of the justice system. And you touch on that in the book as well. So Ronald Olivier, thank you so much for being with us today. It's truly an honor to meet you, sir. Truly. Thank you so much.
Thank you. My pleasure. Grateful to be here.
And now, a brief message from Gospel Spice.
Do you have an idea for a podcast but don't know where to start? Take our Podcasting 101 course with Stephanie Roussel, who shares with you her knowledge and tips to take your podcast from concept to reality. This 3-hour webinar is extremely practical and hands-on, providing you with the information that you need to start a podcast in just 30 days. Plus, the fee for this course is invested back to Gospel Spice. It's like your money gets multiplied. You get top-notch coaching while helping us spread the gospel. Go to gospelspice.com/podcasting for the details.
Thank you so much for watching today's episode. Merci. Please be sure to subscribe to our channel and click that bell icon so you are the first to know when we release a new video or episode. Also, would you please consider helping us reach new people with the good news of the spice of the gospel by leaving a 5-star review for the Gospel Spice podcast on listening platforms like Spotify, iTunes, Google, etc. Finally, share and follow us on social media to spread the word of Gospel Spice. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to tune in our podcast with new episodes every Friday. I'll see you in our next video very soon, right here. Merci.